Geologic time is the extensive interval of time occupied by the geologic history of Earth. Formal geologic time begins at the start of the Archean eon, about 4.0 billion to 2.5 billion years ago, and continues to the present day. Modern biological timescales additionally often include the Hadean eon, which is an informal interval that extends from about 4.6 billion years ago, corresponding to Earth's initial formation, to 4.0 billion years ago. Geologic time is, in effect, that segment of Earth's history that is represented by and recorded in the planet's rock strata. The geologic timescale is the calendar for events in Earth's history. It subdivides all time into named units of abstract time called in descending order or duration from eons, eras, periods, epochs, and ages. The enumeration of those geologic time units is based on stratigraphy, which is the correlation and classification of rock strata. The fossil forms that occur in the rocks, however, provide the chief means of establishing a geologic time scale, with the timing of the emergence and disappearance of widespread species from the fossil record being used to delineate the beginnings and endings of ages, epochs, periods, and other intervals. One of the most widely used standard charts showing the relationships between the various intervals of geologic time is the International Chronostratigraphic Chart, which is maintained by the International Commission on Stratigraphy, or ICS. The study of ancient life on Earth goes hand in hand with the study of Earth's history. And why is this so? This is because fossils trapped in Earth's layers of rock, mostly sedimentary, have much to tell, not only about the changes that happened to living things in the past, but also about the changes that took place in the physical environment of those ancient organisms. Scientists are convinced that changes in the physical environment have favored the appearance, disappearance, increase, or decrease of certain species. Going back to the geologic time scale, again, this is a tabular representation of the history of life based on geologists' study of rocks and the fossils they contain. All the pieces of information about Earth are arranged chronologically from the oldest to the most recent. The oldest is at the bottom of the table while the most recent is at the top of the table. Consequently, the geologic timescale is read from the bottom up. As shown, the first column gives the major divisions of time from the oldest to the most recent. We have Hadean, Archean, Proterozoic, and the Phanerozoic eon. The second column gives the second major division, the eras, from Precambrian up to the Cenozoic era. The third column gives the divisions of an era. It's the periods. We have from Cambrian up to the Quaternary period. The fourth column gives us the divisions of periods. We have the epochs from Paleocene up to Holocene epoch. It's the epoch we are in right now. Some illustrations have forms of life found in the rock layers as revealed by fossil records such as this one. First we have to discuss is the Precambrian life. The Precambrian life, composed of the Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic eras, started more than 550 million years ago. This covers approximately 88% of the Earth's history. It started with the planet's creation about 4.5 billion years ago from dust and gas orbiting the Sun, and ended with the emergence of complex, multi-celled organisms almost 4 billion years later. It is during this time that the Earth was was transformed from a ball of gas and dust to liquid rock enveloped with hot, non-breathable gases mostly composed of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and sulfur. The molten rock cooled down from the Earth's crust, and with that, the gases also changed, providing a cooler atmosphere composed mostly of nitrogen. The Earth became more conducive to life and allowed single-celled cyanobacteria to exist. The earliest life, comprising Precambrian biota, was long believed to include tiny, sessile, soft-bodied sea creatures. However, recently there has been increasing scientific evidence suggesting this time, and possibly even before the Ediacaran period. The latter part of Precambrian life, we have the Proterozoic era, was greatly affected by the movement of the tectonic plates forming the supercontinent Rodinia. It's the Earth's core and atmosphere cooled down and brought about the ice ages. The production of oxygen of the primitive cyanobacteria caused a drastic change in the chemical composition of the Earth's atmosphere. Many species of bacteria and protists were killed by the presence of oxygen. This allowed the domination of aerobic eukaryotes, the first multicellular organisms. Cyanobacteria live in many environments, the same as eukaryotic algae. The Phanerozoic eon is shown along the top left side of this figure and represents the time during which the majority of macroscopic organisms, algal, fungal, plant, and animal lived. When first proposed as a division of geologic time, the beginning of the Phanerozoic was thought to coincide with the beginning of life. In reality, this eon coincides with the appearance of animals that evolved external skeletons like shells, and the somewhat later animals that formed internal skeletons such as the bony elements of vertebrates. The time before is usually referred to as the Precambrian, and exactly what qualifies as an eon or era varies somewhat depending on whom you talk to. In any case, the Precambrian is usually divided into the three eras as shown. The Phanerozoic consists of three major divisions: the Cenozoic, Mesozoic, and the Paleozoic eras. The zoic part of the word comes from the root "zooo", which means animal. "Cen" means recent, "meso" means middle, and "paleo" means ancient. These divisions reflect major changes in the composition of ancient faunas, each era being recognized by its domination by a particular group of animals. The Cenozoic has something been called the Age of Mammals, the Meso Age of Dinosaurs, and Paleo the Age of Fishes. The Paleozoic era, known as the Age of Fishes, lasted for more than 300 million years. This era is divided into six geologic periods: the Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, and Permian. This era began with the breakup of the supercontinent Rodinia into continents Gondwana and Laurentia. Laurentia and Gondwana were continents located near the equator that subsumed much of the current-day land masses in a different configuration. At this time, sea levels were very high, probably at the level that hasn't been reached since. As the Paleozoic progressed, glaciations created a cool global climate, but conditions warmed near the end of the first half of the Paleozoic. During the latter part of the Paleozoic, the land masses began moving together. Eventually, a single supercontinent called Pangaea was formed in the latter part of the Paleozoic. Glaciations then began to affect Pangaea's climate, affecting the distribution of animal life. The Cambrian period is characterized by lowlands, extensive seas, mountain building, have mild climate, abundant marine algae, and invertebrates including trilobites. Most of present major phyla were represented. Trilobites, by the way, are a group of extinct marine arthropods. The Ordovician period is characterized by submergence and emergence of lands, mountain building, you have warm climate, mild at the poles, increasing forms of marine life, marine algae, corals and sea stars, and the first vertebrates or early fishes. It was long thought that the first true vertebrates, the fishes, we have ostracoderms, appeared in Ordovician, and the very first mastostome or jowed fish appeared in the late Ordovician. The Silurian is characterized by shallow seas, extensive mountain building, mild climate, and appearance of first land plants, first land animals such as millipedes, centipedes, and the earliest arachnids. Abundant corals and other marine vertebrates, which includes graptolites, conodonts, and mollusks. The Devonian period is characterized by the emergence of lands, shallow seas formation, and drying of great swamps, warm and humid climate over the world. Also have horsetails and tree ferns are abundant. The first swamp forests, spread of bony fishes and sharks, first amphibians, and spread of vertebrates to land. The Carboniferous period is divided into two, namely the Mississippian and the Pennsylvanian. The spread of insects and amphibians, such as Amphibamus grandiceps, are shown. Also have abundant sharks and echinoderms, as well as the formation of coal forests. It occurred during the Mississippian, while abundant plants, large insects, abundant amphibians, and the first reptiles appeared during the Pennsylvanian. The earliest known reptile is Hylonomus lyelli, which lived about 315 million years ago. The Permian period is characterized by extensive swamps, which dried later, emergence of lands, mountain building, glaciation in southern hemisphere, varied climate over the earth, sweeping out of swamps, first cycads, increase in variety of reptiles, disappearance of trilobites and other invertebrates. This era started around 245 million years ago and lasted for 180 million years. It is subdivided into three periods, namely Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Movement of the tectonic plates was milder during this era. The most significant landmass activity was the gradual rifting of the supercontinent Pangaea. This split of Pangaea into a northern continent Laurasia and a southern continent Gondwana. This created the passive continental margin that characterizes most of the Atlantic coastline. By the end of this era, the continents had rifted into nearly their present form. Laurasia became North America and Eurasia, while Gondwana split into South America, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and the Indian supercontinent. The first period of the Mesozoic era is the Triassic. It is characterized by high lands, many deserts, extensive seas, tropical and subtropical warm climate, abundant gymnosperms, appearance of seed ferns, also have first dinosaurs, the Plateosaurus, Swimming and mammal-like reptiles, decrease in number of marine invertebrates. Jurassic period is characterized by lowlands, extensive seas and swamp, mountain building, warm climate, first angiosperms, abundant gymnosperms. First mammals, you have the morganocodontids. First birds, the archaeopteryx. Spread of reptiles, abundant insects and ammonites. The Cretaceous period is characterized by lowlands, spread of seas and swamps, mountain building, uniform mild climate at first, cooler and varied later. Spread of angiosperms, decrease in the number of gymnosperms, spread of primitive mammals, abundant birds, extinction of many reptiles and ammonites, and spread of insects. Though dinosaurs ruled throughout the Cretaceous, the dominant groups shifted and many new types evolved. Sauropods dominated the southern continents but became rare in the north. Earth-dwelling ornithischians like iguanodon spread everywhere but Antarctica. Toward the close of the Cretaceous, vast herds of horned beasts such as Triceratops, munch cycads, and other low-lying plants on the northern continents. The carnivore Tyrannosaurus rex dominated the late Cretaceous in the north, while monstrous meat-eaters like Spinosaurus, which had a huge sail-like fin on its back, thrived in the south. Smaller carnivores likely battled for the scraps. The Cenozoic era started 65 million years ago and continues up to the present time, is divided into three periods: the Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary. The world's great mountain ranges were built during this era. The main alpine orogeny, which produced the Alps and Carpathians in southern Europe and the Atlas Mountains in northwestern Africa, began roughly between 37 and 24 million years ago. The Himalayas were formed sometime after the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate. The formation of these mountain ranges were contributed to the cooling down of the climate in this era. At the dawn of the Paleogene, the beginning of the Cenozoic era, dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and giant marine reptiles were conspicuously absent from the face of the earth. Rodent-sized and perhaps larger mammals emerged, suddenly free to fill the void, and over the next 42 million years, they grew in size, number, and diversity. As the period came to a close, life forms still commonly today filled the seas, dominated the land, and had taken to the air. This period is divided into three epochs. We have Paleocene, Eocene, and Oligocene. But the biggest development in the seas was the appearance of whales in the mid to late Paleogene. The huge animals evolved from land mammals that took to the seas. Meanwhile, smaller reptiles that survived the Cretaceous, such as turtles, snakes, crocodiles, and lizards, bask in the tropical warmth along the coast. Birds, the holdouts of the dinosaur age, diversified and flourished in the skies. But the rapidly evolving mammals stole the show. Starting from a fairly humble position 65 million years ago, primates, horses, bats, pigs, cats, and dogs had all evolved by the close of the period. It's about 23 million years ago. Then we have the condylarth. The condylarth on the left is a hoofed animal which is an important member of the Paleocene epoch. Then the image in the middle is a coryphodon from the Eocene epoch. Then we have Indricotherum from Oligocene epoch. From afar, Earth looked much as it does today when the Neogene period began. But looks are deceiving, I guess. Mountains rose and sea levels fell. The climate cooled and dried. Species were formed to adapt or die. This period has two epochs, namely the Miocene, where mammals and angiosperms continue to diversify, such as the saber-toothed cat. In the Pliocene, bipedal human ancestors appear. In the oceans, a new type of large brown algae, called kelp, latch onto rocks and corals in cool, shallow waters, establishing a new habitat flavored by sea otters and dugongs, a marine mammal related to the elephant. Sharks grew and dominated the seas once again. We have the megalodon, the biggest shark of all, was nearly 50 feet long. Meanwhile, on land, Asian and African apes diverged, and then several million years later, hominins split from their closest African ape ancestors, the chimpanzees. Adapted to two-footed walking, early hominins dropped out of the trees and started to carry food and tools in their hands. These new species were poised to alter the planet unlikely any other in the centuries to come. The Quaternary is further divided into Pleistocene and Holocene epochs. Climate change and the developments it spurred carry the narrative of the Quaternary, the most recent 2.6 million years of Earth's history. Glaciers advance from the poles and then retreat, carving and molding the land with each pulse. Sea levels fall and rise with each period of freezing and thawing. Some mammals get massive, grow furry coats, and then disappear. Humans evolve to their modern form, traipse around the globe, and make a mark on just about every Earth system, including the climate. The Quaternary is often considered the age of humans. Homo erectus appeared in Africa at the start of the period, and as time marched on, the hominid line evolved bigger brains and higher intelligence. The first modern humans evolved in Africa about 190,000 years ago and dispersed to Europe and Asia and then to Australia and the Americas. Along the way, the species has altered the composition of life in the seas, on land, and in the air, and now scientists believe we're causing the planet to warm. Mammalian evolution included the development of large forms, many of which became adapted to Arctic conditions, such as this woolly rhinoceros during the Pleistocene epoch. To summarize, geologists have divided Earth's history into a series of time intervals, which is reflected in the geologic time scale. Geologic time is divided using significant events in the history of the Earth. Most of the representative organisms are recorded from Cambrian up to the Quaternary period. As such, fossils older than Cambrian are rare because of different geologic events which must have washed away the organisms probably present during the time before Cambrian. The Precambrian life covers the Hadean, Archean, and Proterozoic, while the Phanerozoic eon is further subdivided into the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic eras. The Cenozoic is subdivided into the Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary epochs.